It's crazy to fight around and attempt to use a nuclear power station in effect as an improvised nuclear weapon. A few weeks ago, the Russians put explosives on the Kakhovka Dam and blew it up, creating an environmental disaster not dissimilar to the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in the 80s. So they have done this before. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, the second biggest in the world, is in a critical bit of ground, if you like, critical to the Ukrainian offensive. And if the Russians blew it up, it would have a huge impact on Ukraine's attempt to kick the Russians out of Ukraine, but also, as President Zelensky has said, potentially a huge catastrophe for Europe. Allied to this, the Russians for the last week have been taking troops and safety staff out of Zaporizhzhia and told people to evacuate down south to Crimea, which is a worry. And at the moment, the atmospheric conditions would lead us to believe that contamination would basically head sort of northwest across Ukraine and into sort of Germany and Poland. So it's highly unlikely it would go south to Crimea or east into Russia. So that is the concern. You know, it's almost unthinkable. However, Putin keeps doing unthinkable things.
Is there any way of preparing for this eventuality to lessen the effect of it, if it were to happen?
Well, first of all, there is a lot we should be doing to make sure it doesn't happen. I was delighted that the US Senate are now trying to pass a motion to say that if the Russians blew up Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, that would be an Article 5 event, probably, which would get NATO fully involved, which Putin knows would be the end of him. So hopefully he's looking at that. The British government, I think, should say the same as well. Secondly, myself and other people have been calling for probably the last year, as long as the Russians have been there, that we should have a demilitarized zone around Zaporizhzhia and the other nuclear power stations in Ukraine. And with the Russians leaving, there would be an opportunity now for the UN to get people in there to create this demilitarized zone so that it couldn't happen. The third element, something that I've been doing for the last year, is teaching the civilians in Ukraine how to prepare for this sort of disaster and what to do if it happens. So at least people have a rough idea of what to do. So if the worst comes to the worst and they follow the guidance and the guidance of the Ukraine emergency services, hopefully the casualties will be minimized. But number one, we've just got to prevent this happening. It's crazy to fight around and attempt to use a nuclear power station in effect as an improvised nuclear weapon.
Hamish, thank you.